Hello. Hi, Tan. How you doing?
Hello, Graham. Welcome back to It's Not F Your Bins tonight. And it's not, I don't think it's technically the Sunday service tonight. Unfortunately, our dear compadre Aid cannot commit because he's a very hands-on dad with lots of stresses. But tonight we're going to be talking about a topic that we are both particularly embittered about, and that is the concept of class. And the reason why the reason why Graham's a perfect person to talk to about this is because one of the things that made me think I like you when I first met you was the fact that you started a website called the Private School Mafia. For anyone that's not familiar with it, give them a brief overview, Graham.
It started it was only a couple of years ago, actually. I think it was after COVID. And I just started noticing, like, so many people on TV were posh. That was it. Do you know what I mean? And because at the time, Boris Johnson, Rees-Mogg, Michael Gove, I started looking into where they all went to school. Or was the Brexiters? It must have been before COVID then that I started thinking about it. But it was after COVID I started, because Cummings, Farage, Andy Wigmore, that horrible little man who ran for mayor down in London, Aaron Banks, in Monmouthshire or somewhere. Aaron Banks, all of them, they all went to private school. And I started going, okay, well, I'll make a little website of like maybe 100 names of famous people in the public eye who went to private school, right? And all it does is just say the name, and it says the school they went to, and then it says what the job is. So the job might be Brexit wanker, but that's what we put out as the job. But it's grown and grown. I honestly put on a good few names a week. Sometimes in one day I'll put an extra 5 names on the list.
And it's always the people you most expect.
Yes. And I'm currently up to 1,255 names on the list.
What?
And they're all people in the public eye.
I'm not surprised, because every time one of us in our various group chats comes across someone that's trying to kind of like pull us apart or create a kind of conspiracy like that Charlotte Gill woman. Oh, these people that all know each other that all happen to be on the left. Every single time you see someone like that online, private school.
She's on the list. Charlotte Gill's on the list.
I don't know how you managed to find her, because I think she's using a pseudonym.
Is she? I don't know. I sussed it. I don't know. I just go onto like LinkedIn and stuff. They're usually like Wikipedia pages are that famous, but a few of them, they're not that famous, so they don't have a Wikipedia page. Unlike me.
What? Oh yeah, of course you do.
Just saying.
Just saying. But it's so predictable. You can just tell. But the reason that this is interesting me at the moment is because this all ties into the whole, Farage reform thing. And the thing that really angers me about it is how they're co-opting my class and trying to sell bigotry to me. And I've got even people that are like also working class calling me a traitor because they're believing the lies of these like millionaire ex-city boys who've got infinite funding to brainwash them.
Well, before we get onto that, can I just say hello to everyone in the chat? We've got Witchy Goth and Richie Grumpy Gate. We've also got a super chat from Yuri if you want to read that out. And we've got Brett is in there with a pitch for something. We'll have to talk about that later. A pitch for a pod. A pitch for a pod.
Oh, a pitch for a pod.
A pitch for a pod.
I have recovered from the mouse incident, Sarah. Yuri, hello. If we're ripping on Farage, shouldn't this be the Sunday roast? Well, that's actually the name of a show which my friend, who I think might be in the chat tonight, Political X, he does the Sunday roast. Yeah.
Well, at the end of my Sunday morning show on Politics Social. So, by the way, I'm Graham Hughes, Politics Social.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't really.
And this is Tan Smith from also known as Supertanskiii.
I should have done this. I'm so sorry. I'm still trying to find my feet with my streams, you see, which is why we're going through a bunch of ideas. But yeah, Graham is an amazing streamer, YouTuber, goes by the name of Politics Social.
I am a streamer and a streamer. YouTuber, but I don't know about amazing. I'm working on that. Working on my Spider-Man moves. But yeah, thanks Yuri for the super chat.
Yeah, thank you, Yuri. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, well let's get into this class thing, okay? Because I didn't notice it growing up, because growing up in Liverpool is a funny place to grow up. So just to explain, like in my school, there were Catholics, there were Protestants, we had Jewish kids, there were Muslim kids. And even in my secondary school, there were kids from all over the city. So the catchment area of my school was like all the way up to very, very north of Liverpool. It was past Bootle, it was up into Crosby, and then in the south. So in Liverpool, we've kind of got a bit of a north-south divide, like a microcosm of the country. The north is more working class, and the south is more middle class. It was like, in the north, it was all the dock workers, and then in the south were all the merchants. So it's all the big Victorian houses are in the south of the city, and all like the terrace streets. I mean, I'm not saying all. I mean, most of them. There's areas that.
So you grew up in the city. You were like, you're kind of like the place where I visited when I came for a conference. Was that your home growing up?
Yeah, so I'm in the east of Liverpool, so I'm like on the border between the north and the south. Right. So I had a range of friends. Now, I grew up in a very middle class household. I'm not going to claim to be working class, and I want to get into this kind of like people who are working class who don't think they're working class, and people who are middle class who think they're working class and they're absolutely not. And I think that there's a thing that Farage has identified in people to go, oh, I'll get them. So the people who worked in a bank and retired like 30 years ago or something on a full salary pension, and they have a nice semi-detached house with a gorgeous garden, and yet they think that they are working class, in a leafy suburb, and you're like, how do you work that? It's because they grew up poor in the 1940s or 1950s.
Like Kay Badenoch thinking she was working class because she worked
in McDonald's. Yeah, I know. But like the idea that people have that social mobility and they've become middle class is like an embarrassment to people. They want to pretend that they're working class when, I'm sorry, but if you work in a bank, you work in finance, you work as an accountant or a lawyer, you may have been born working class, but you're not working class anymore. And I think that there is sort of like this idea of people who are sort of happy in the fact that they're working class or happy in the fact they're middle class. They're looked down upon by these people who are kind of like, they're not class traitors, I don't think. They just, I think they delude themselves. And Farage is very good at tapping into that delusion. And that's why you get so many working class people voting for him. And middle class people who have bought their own home because of Thatcher's buy-to-let scheme, whatever, and they fall for it because they're like, oh, he's like me, and he's not. He was born rich. He's not. There's no rags to riches story with Nigel Farage. He's been on the gravy train since the day he was born.
And he's born to immigrants, like German. He's like German. Like it's really weird. But that thing you were talking about is very the whole, like, it reminds me of Cocker with the whole "you think that poor is cool,"
Yes.
That whole line. And also, I think growing up where you grew up in like a kind of middle class, working class area is totally different, I think, to down south in the home counties, because as we know, the north has been for many decades just left to its own devices. Like the Tories destroyed. It was already destroyed when the Tories. Actually, no, it wasn't doing as bad when the Tories inherited it, and then it was like 14 years of just taking away and then redistributing the funds that were supposed to go into.
Before then, when they were in the 80s, that was.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean,
17 years, 18 years. We had the first 18 years of my life. It's Tory government, 1979 to 1997. Tory government, and Liverpool was left behind. It really, really was. I mean, the Tories will go, oh, but we sorted out the Albert Dock, and that's like the only thing they did. And they talked about letting the city fall into managed decline. That's what they wanted to do, and they wanted to strip it of all of its industry. And they wanted, and the sad thing is, between 1960 and the end of the 60s and the beginning of the 80s, 500,000 people left the city. Half the city left because there were no jobs. And this idea that Scousers are all, on the dole and they're all robbing stuff, it's bullshit. Like, if there was no work, so people left, they had to leave. And so there's this mad Scouse diaspora around the world and around the country where you'll meet people and they'll say, oh, yeah, my mum's from Liverpool or my dad's from Liverpool. And that's one of the reasons why.
But a proud history, though, that like Liverpool, on a number of fronts. I mean, less than that can be said for where I grew up. Because I actually grew up, like, comparatively much poorer, but in a very, very affluent area.
Yeah.
So it was like a proper, So I grew up in a kind of little council house, very small.
Yeah.
But right in front of me from my window, I could see a private school and its grounds, like
Wow.
this opulent building. It almost looked like Westminster.
Yeah.
And I was born to like teenage parents on the dole. Like that was who I was born to. They were 19 years old, you know. They could have got rid of me, but they didn't. So we lived in this you know, tiny little free up, free down house.
Yeah.
And when people ask about your origin story, it's like I think that's one because the way that you were treated and sneered at, like the first time I became conscious of class, I think I was probably about 8,
Mm.
or 7, or well, no, even younger than that, because obviously I didn't have like all the nice clothing that because it was a village, so all the kids that
Yeah.
went to my state.
That's fascinating that you were aware of it at that age. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think I grew up in a bubble because it was just normal to have working class mates. It was normal to have middle class mates. And then you see interviews with like Rishi Sunak where he goes, well, you know, I don't talk to working class people. And it's like,
But they don't. This is the thing.
yeah, I
Like,
didn't realize.
yeah, they really, and it's not just that, they tried to criminalize you. The reason that I knew really young was because when I'd go for play dates at my friends' houses, they were like these big detached houses. And I felt too ashamed, even when I was really young, to invite friends over to my house because they
Wow.
weren't as big and I didn't have all the fancy toys. And like, even just down to having, like, my nan, bless her, she helped us out loads because she was a bit better off.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so there was that element. And then there was also the kids at the private school were told not to mix with us.
Yeah.
Like, told not to mix. And if there was ever a crime in the village that was committed by the private kids,
Yeah.
private school kids, it would get blamed on us automatically.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't even question the kids at the school. They would just send the copper that was on the corner of our street, because back then, way back then, you had like we had like a bobby that was on the corner of our road.
Yeah.
He'd come round, he'd go, I know you've not done anything, but just to keep them quiet, like I have to ask. And it'd be like, oh, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and the actual parents who drove through this little village in their big Land Rovers and their status symbols, they would sneer at us, you know, that the parents would visibly be disgusted with us because we'd play on the little football on the little corner of the school field because it was like opposite our house. There was a big, massive green field.
Yeah.
And then there was also the element of if you grow up dirt poor, like obviously everyone at a certain age pretends they don't know, but you know that Santa Claus isn't real, you know. I used to think about what my parents could.
Spoilers.
Sorry, guys. I used to think about what my parents might be able to afford for Santa to bring me
Yeah.
when I was making the list. You know, my little brother would be like, he wouldn't have any idea, he'd be writing like, oh, what a Porsche. But I would be like really acutely aware of it.
This is
And
interesting because Avocado Toast Boomer in the chat is saying, why is Britain obsessed with class? And I think that's a really good question. And to go back to my experience, like, so I lived in this bubble. And then when I was 14 years old, I went to stay with my auntie and uncle in Denmark for a couple of weeks. My auntie was a Scouser. She married a Danish guy back in like the early 70s. And she lived over at that time, she'd lived in Denmark for nearly 25 years. And she said to me, Britain is a class-obsessed country that still hasn't gotten over the loss of its empire. And as a kid, like as a 14-year-old kid, I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't really understand. But once I went to university and started meeting people from like, you know, really posh people, really, really posh people, I thought, bloody hell, she was right. You know, that on both counts, we are obsessed with class and we shouldn't be. And I find this really interesting. When I was in India, I've been to India a few times, and they have the caste system over there.
yes,
And unless you are Indian, you are not going to get your head around the caste system. Because if you grow up in India, you can tell by someone's accent, or even sometimes by the way they look, what caste they are. And this
wow,
is a shit system, which means that some people are born to do one job for the rest of their lives, and there can be no social mobility. Because when you die, you might get reincarnated as something better. And it's a system that you, as an outsider, you go in and you go, oh, shit, that's awful. But then you come back to Britain and you're like, we've got exactly the same thing here. And everything that the upper class, I regard Farage as upper class. I don't regard him as middle class. Pretty much anyone who has a Coots bank account is neo-aristocracy to me.
Yeah.
Everything they've done since the year I was born, since 1979, everything they've done is to kick the ladder away for people like you. And that's why only 8% of people working in film and TV come from a working class background in this country. 8%. That is, and you can watch TV in this country. Like you could watch TV all day for like 24 hours and not see a single person who went to a comprehensive school.
Or they nick the ideas. I mean, this is the problem. And when people say, "Oh, you're class obsessed in your country," some of us don't have to be. Some of us very much do have to be, because we're living with the effects of it. Even doing this, I mean, obviously, what you've just mentioned about the 8%, that's just class. When you condense it into, race, gender too. I mean, working class women make up a part of that. Working class black kids, people make up.
There's a couple of super chats that have just come in. There's a fantastic message there as well, just going in with what you're saying.
Okay, so Ivan Ambrose. Hello, Ivan. As a Labour Party member, I'm going to say that they are making another mistake. There are loads of sectors that they can crack down on for immigration, but they choose to target this already struggling care sector. Yes, very much agree with that.
Yeah. Well, my dad gets the carers coming in 4 times a day. I mean, you came to mind, didn't you? The carers came in and we had to leave the room. Yeah.
Great, amazing people. And I very much agree with you. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm choosing not to be a member again. Until they sort it out, because it's not just the legitimising by repeating and furthering reform rhetoric. It's the kind of the austerity. And Gordon Brown, as I've said before, redistributed via stealth. These guys are like openly implementing austerity that's totally off label. It wasn't in their manifesto. None of us that voted for this Labour government voted for a party that had said or admitted it'd bring back austerity. So very much agree with you there, Ivan. And we've got Ashley Wilson. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Ashley. Anyone who has struggled in poverty knows how expensive it is to be poor.
Yeah,
absolutely. Especially when you look at things like cheap shoes. So the economy, you can only afford to buy like a £10 pair of shoes. They're going to wear out.
Yeah, Yori references that. Yori says Terry Patchet summed it up perfectly in Vime's theory on boots. Which is like your boots wear out if you have to buy cheap boots, and the rich person. But I see this with buses, like the fact that public transport trains, how much is it going to cost you to get to Brighton?
Well, an open return from my part of Essex to Brighton, which is a couple of hours on the train, would be less if I didn't have to divert through London.
Yeah.
But it's at least 85 quid.
That is
obviously also have to pay for Liverpool Street to Farringdon to get my connecting train. And
is that each way or is that a return?
That's an open return.
Okay, so so there's 5 of you. It's way cheaper to hire a car, hire a petrol car and drive.
It does take quite a long time though, to be fair. So I've got one more here from Hidite. Thank you. £2 super chat. The Clacton frog Farage is an invasive species. I could not agree more. But this is interesting, isn't it? It's everything's much harder. And I remember back in terms of culture, I remember when you look back at the 90s and the kind of like everything was more colourful and creative. And I don't think that's just through retrospect. I was watching some of the old pot noodle adverts the other day. They were hilarious, man. They called it the slag of snacks openly on like primetime telly. And you think like loads of those artists, I think Oasis have spoken about this before, about how without the dole they wouldn't have been able to write their albums.
Yeah.
And whilst it's obviously like I can understand why some people might get pissed off about the fact that people, use the dole to be creative, that's the only outlet that's open to people that haven't got a dad that will fund their like music career. I mean, a huge percentage of the artists are kind of like upper middle class.
Yes.
Look at bloody Mumford and Sons, old Fash Boy, and
he got to ask the president of America a question, didn't he? The banjo player, the banjo player at Mumford and Sons.
How did that come about?
Well, his dad owns GB News, doesn't he?
Oh, of course.
He's on my private school mafia list. But the muscling out of working class voices from the art, I think it just does us such a disservice. And like things used to be better. I know that sounds like I'm just going, oh yeah, I'll pull some nostalgia out my arse and say, oh yeah,
But they
things were better in
were.
the olden days. But it's just a statistical fact that when the second half of the 20th century, the majority of prime ministers went to state schools. John Major went to a state school. Thatcher went to a state school. Heath, Wilson, both went to state schools. And then you get to the 20th century, and all but Gordon Brown and the 10 seconds that we had of Liz Truss, they all went to private school. Now, it's not really Keir Starmer's fault because his school became private while he was there, and he never had to pay.
Scholarship.
So he was very, very lucky. But I think that's something that I would love people to reflect on more. Is the luck, is the absolute dumb luck that people have, and the privilege that comes from that. And when you do get working class voices, especially women, who are speaking out against injustice, it seems like the guns are out for them more than any other person, especially if they're trans, especially if they're black, especially if they're any kind of minority, because these upper class, upper echelons, they just want them to shut up. They don't want them to have the same kind of voice. They don't want them to go on the same kind of holidays. They don't want them to have the same kind of television to watch. And
Angela Rayner's a prime example.
You know, the snobbery is just breathtaking. And there's an expression that I never heard growing up, and then I heard it, once I've sort of left home and everything. They've got ideas above their station. When someone said that, I'm just taken aback. Like, whose station? People have stations? What is this?
I've heard
This isn't what I was brought up with. I was brought up with, like, you work hard, you can achieve stuff, you can achieve your dream, but that's been taken away now, I feel, from generations.
It massively has.
Artists, musicians, actors, like the big actors of the 1960s, Sean Connery, Michael Caine, they came from working class backgrounds. But nearly all the actors now have won Oscars in the last few years, apart from Gary Oldman. They're all on my private school mafia list.
Yeah.
Some of them are really loved, by the way. I'm not saying they're all bad people on this list. It's just they've had a leg up that the rest of us haven't got.
Not all people that went to private school, but at the same time, there's no denying, absolutely no denying that it is paid advantage, and they know it. And if it wasn't paid advantage, they wouldn't pay for it.
Yeah, but they don't know it, Tan. Like you say this to them, and they honestly think that they just did it off their own brilliance.
Oh no, the parents. I mean, well, no, the parents that are paying for it. Sorry, excuse me. I've got my phone's on. Nothing ever charges properly in my life. I'm so professional. But no, the parents know what they're paying for. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying for it. I mean, and then you get like people that went to private school and benefited from it, referring to you as being, getting involved in politics of envy if you dare talk about the fact that it is a chip on your shoulder. But the ideas above your station thing, I have had that said to me. And I've also had people saying, you need to be brought down a peg or two. It's like, mate, there's nowhere else for me to go. there's no kind of like further bit below this, I'm not rolling in it. But then there's like it's like the Angela Rayner so it's just not going to charge. Sorry about this. The Angela Rayner situation is a prime example of this. The amount of the additional kind of levels of misogyny, like all MPs get it, but the misogyny that she gets is just on another level, and it's always related to kind of like, oh well, she's chavvy, she must have her legs open all the time, sneering at her when she went through enormous hardship and she grafted to get to the point of being deputy prime minister.
She's an inspiration in a way that Benedict Cumberbatch isn't. I'm not saying Benedict Cumberbatch isn't a great actor. I think he's fantastic. However, he had it all handed to him on a silver platter. He went to a very expensive private school.
Quite literally.
Yeah, he went to the University of Manchester, and obviously because he knows he would have known people. And this is something that I talk about when I say, look, try to start your own business. I'm sick of seeing these dickheads on TikTok and YouTube making these videos about like how to become rich, and they're like, oh, you got to think more entrepreneurially. You got to think like an entrepreneur. And I'm like, if you are on the dole and you're starting your own business, if it fucks up, that's it. What are you going to do? You're going to lose everything. You
And
can't pay the rent. You're out on the streets.
It's not just that either. It's the fact that you can't account for any form of anything going wrong. Like
Yeah,
I knew this growing up when our washing machine broke.
yeah,
My nan lived round the corner. For a month or 2 months, we were having to rely on my nan to kind of help get our. If my nan hadn't been there, my mum would have been doing it with her hands in our
yeah,
sink.
yeah,
And then the only option available for my mum, because my parents couldn't afford it outright, was to get a really high interest rate on a kind of like it was like a kind of like buy now pay later type thing,
yeah,
a really high interest rate, something that every working class kid will know is hiding, or most working class or poor kids will know, is about hiding from the provident man or the
yeah,
provident lady,
yeah,
because they're the only kind of loans that were available to people that didn't have anything. And unfortunately, they were a bit of a con because they would
yeah.
rinse you.
Oh,
Like they would.
absolutely. This is why being poor is so expensive. Being poor is surprisingly expensive. But look,
Wow.
I can't complain. Like I was lucky. I was very, very lucky. I was just born in the right place at the right time. My dad owned his own business. It was car mechanics, so you could argue that that's quite a working class profession. But he owned the shop. Do
At
you know what
all,
I mean?
mate.
Which is very working class. Sorry, very middle class. And I couldn't have done the things that I've done in my life without the support and that safety net being there to make videos, to go traveling around the world, to do all the stuff I've done. If I didn't feel like there was a safety net there, I wouldn't have done it. And so when I talk about universal basic income, I want everyone to have the safety net that I have, that I had. Well, I still have it,
Well,
basically.
you see, that's the complete opposite experience to me. Like,
Yeah.
there's no one that's going to help me. Like, if I in my adult
Oh, we got a
life.
couch here. You can keep on this couch if you want. You just
But no,
push
the
push the
thing is,
badger
like,
off.
I'm extremely independent and self-reliant when it comes to finances, and I've always had to be,
Yeah,
because I've not got a parent that's able to just give me a grand or help me or be a guarantor for somewhere if I want to rent somewhere. I have not got that.
yeah,
Um, they would probably be more likely to benefit from 50 quid from me.
yeah,
So we just don't have that option. And I don't think a lot of people understand, unless they've grown up dirt poor and haven't really progressed much further since, what that's like. And it's terrifying,
yeah,
because the adage about you being a certain amount of time away from being homeless
yeah.
is spot on.
And
In
that
my
terror
case,
stops
I
people
give up.
from living their lives.
Sorry.
I don't just want people to survive. I want people to bloom. I want people to blossom. I want people to have the time of their lives while they're alive. And we've
Well,
got the
rather
money
than
to do it.
yeah. I
That's
mean,
the
this is
frustrating thing.
that's
These billionaires, they doubled how much money they've got during the COVID pandemic. Amazon made a killing. Netflix. I mean, all these things it was like
Tesco.
perfect for the pandemic. It was all set up. And they're like, pandemic lads are brilliant. And they still took trillions of dollars all over the world, off governments all over the world to keep going. The big bastards.
Well, including the businesses of certain kind of high profile MPs.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but the worry that I have is that we don't seem to have the same kind of musical or creative resistance now. Not
Yeah.
like the days when you had people like Tracy Emin able to become like an artist. She was from a proper, working class roots. Working
Yeah.
class bands like, Oasis, Blur, for the most part, everyone thinks they're all middle class. They weren't like, in fact, the drummer's life story is pretty sad, really.
Yeah.
Very difficult early
Dave.
start. Um,
And Pulp famously. I mean, they were just some
kitchen sink of
working
music.
class weirdos. Do you know what I mean? But they were singing songs about what it's like to come from from Sheffield, working class city, and being different, and that being okay. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think you're right, and I think it's to the detriment of the arts, and I think it's one of the reasons why you're not seeing any new bands now. There's so
it's
few
harder.
new bands out there. We're still listening to music from 35 years ago, which is
Well,
embarrassing.
that has to be our kind of like our call to arms, really, because that's what everyone recognizes it as.
Yeah,
And it's kind of sad. You get almost nostalgic about when you know, the working classes actually had some self-respect. And I've been saying this a lot lately because I don't care anymore. Unfortunately, there's a lot of commentators out there that are openly, clearly middle class, who kind of profess to speak for working class people, which to me is as offensive, even if they are on the left, as people on the right telling us that we're bigots, inherently bigoted, and you know, we're racist. And you get them kind of lecturing.
Yeah.
And they
What the
sometimes
working classes need to do, ... I mean, it's someone who went
this
to
is
private school saying this. I'm kind of like, you know,
this
if
is
it's Mick Lynch saying it, okay, well, you know, he's
I'll let Mick Lynch off. Like, because,
we'll let him off. I know he's a Brexiter, but you know, we'll let him off. But
despite
like,
that,
when someone is on TikTok and they're saying, well, you know, what the trade unions need to do is they really need to stand up against Labour, and I'm just like, oh. And I think we were talking about the Green Party in the chat the other day, and I was just like, one of the big problems I think the Green Party's got, there's hardly any working class people that I associate with the Green Party. Like, if I think of Caroline Lucas or Zach Balansky, they went to private school. You know, they're posh people.
yes.
They sound posh. And when they
Yeah, I
say,
mean, and the independent or a lot of the commentators. I mean, you've got
yeah,
again, I'm not here to slate anyone individually. I'm not going to mention any names, but there are some in particular that have that have cut glass accents. I mean, they evidently are rich.
yeah.
And one of them who, you know, it's very much daddy bought me a podcast studio. One of the guys sitting there with his bloody owls with curls and his designer
But what it
t-shirt
does
saying,
as well, you're right, and it
like,
muscles.
what I was
Sorry?
going to say is he was sitting there like lecturing me and other people that are evidently nowhere near as rich as them
Yeah,
on what we should say and how we should react to this.
tone
And that's the
policing.
thing that made my blood boil
Yeah,
because it's like when you've lived it, like I know you studied politics, but this guy has no lived experience of this situation. It's almost like going up to someone that's trans or someone that's black and telling them how they should deal with their oppression. You know, it's
yeah,
really offensive.
yeah. We got a few super chats in. Do you want me to read them out? Because your phone's on the
Sorry,
ring.
yeah, my phone is just coming back to life. I don't know what's going on. It wouldn't
Okay.
charge. Thank you, Graham.
Just me in videos. Thank you so much for the 35 euros. Always love to get euros.
Oh,
So
thanks.
thanks very much for that. You have my compassion. I have to go back 2 generations to know the deprivations you have on our suffering. I've heard the stories and I've seen the pain in my grandparents' eyes for a few times they've talked about it.
Oh, wow. No,
Thanks for
thank you
that.
for
Just me in
doing that.
videos. That's really
Yeah.
kind of you. And then we've got questionable absanity. Thank you very much for the super chat.
Thank you.
We are at a level of tech where the most unskilled working class labour can be done by almost anyone. And I think it would be a better idea to distribute the work so posh people can collect bins too. Yes.
That is a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of wealth that's the kind of redistribution.
It's like
Quite literally.
jewelry service, bin service.
Could you imagine like seeing
Brilliant.
someone like a bloody Rees Mogg trying to
Yeah.
pull like a wheelie down the road?
Well,
That'd be a haunting vision.
I know we've got our own issues with James O'Brien for various reasons, but he often talks about, because he's obviously private school mafia. In fact, like 90% of the people who work for LBC are private school mafia.
Yes.
It's very, very rare to get a
Besides
state school.
Sangeeta
Yeah,
Maisa.
Sangeeta Maisa was.
And you know, she got taken out the back and shot, didn't she?
She
So-
did, yeah. That's what you get for not being posh enough. But he often talks about, he did like a summer working on a building site. And I think that for him, that was more of a formative experience. Because up to that point, he had never met anyone who's working class. Because his family were, you know, I guess his parents were originally working class, but like by the time he was born, his dad was working for the Telegraph. You know, really, really well-paid reporter, journalist. He went to the elite private Catholic school in the country. And like he only hung around with other rich kids. You know, and these schools, by the way, they're supposed to have so many kids on bursaries. And whenever we criticise private schools, you always get this, what about kids on bursaries? It's about 1% of kids get a 100% bursary.
Very small.
So what happens is a lot of kids, not all of them, like, you know, there are some from working class backgrounds, I don't dispute that. But a lot of them are from middle class backgrounds and the parents basically get a discount. It's like using a discount coupon and we pick it up. The taxpayer picks up that tab.
Believable.
Out of, you know, the million tax dodgers that are involved in private schools. Yuri, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Providence and Kay's catalogue.
Oh my
It's going back
God.
a while, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it wasn't just K's, it was Freeman's as well. Like,
Freeman's.
because I remember it was almost like the kind of equivalent of getting things on the tick, right? So
Yeah,
that's the way that you did it. It was, and then you'd end up, your parents would probably inevitably end up with loads of debt because their repayments and their rates were the interest was so high. And then there's also the element of illiteracy
yeah,
because if my parents weren't kind of like high earners, they didn't spend my entire like life on the dole. They worked. My dad worked at the airport. My mum worked at the school. Um, the problem was they weren't necessarily brought up with financial literacy when it came to handling stuff like that. They probably even know. I mean, my mum had crippling dyscalculia, I think, so didn't even know like what that percentage, that EPR thing meant
yeah,
necessarily.
yeah,
And they would just give them to anybody. And you end up that's how you can really quickly accumulate debt if you're poor,
yeah,
is because you don't know what it's like to have the things.
yeah,
So you might get a bit carried away, and before you know it, you're not just paying back for the thing, but you're paying back like $1,000 on
yeah.
top of it.
And there's a couple of cultural things there. Working class people spend a bigger proportion of their income on presents for their kids
Yes.
than middle class people do. And
Mm,
also, any kind of fine that you get is regressive. So if you get a parking fine, it's 30 quid.
mm,
If you're middle class or you're rich, you're upper class, you're neo aristocracy. If
mm,
you've got 3 million in the bank account, what's 30 quid? It's nothing. It's pennies. But if you're earning £30 a day, that's a day's wages that you've lost because you've made an innocent mistake, like you've parked in the wrong place or you were there for 5 minutes longer than you thought you were going to be because you got held up.
mm.
Nurses working in hospitals being held up because someone literally comes in dying and they end up getting a fine for parking in the hospital car park for 5 minutes too long, or whatever it is. That to me is really, really grim and something that needs to be addressed.
I can never remember that saying. Punishable by a fine is something for a cost or something. The
Mm,
point is that, like, usually it's like with the water companies, like the richest, they can afford the fine, so they get away with the criminality,
yeah,
because they're either let off the hook or they don't, or they have the money to pour into that fine,
yeah,
so they get to be criminals.
yeah,
Um, but if there were kind of like real consequences, it's a different matter. But that also applies to people like, say, what you were just talking about. If you can't afford to pay it straight away, that's it. And then before you know it, you could end up down the route of having like a CCJ, or because but then that also plays into like there's also an element of if you're neurodivergent at working class, you're completely fucked because you don't do any of your admin. So you don't open your bills, or there's so many different branches off of this.
it's
But
traps, isn't it? Traps that you fall into, and they set all these
absolute
traps,
bear traps. Yeah, it's an
and the
absolute.
rich are just flying over them.
Yeah, yeah, which
We,
is why it really, really pisses me off when there are people like Aid, for example. He grew up dirt poor too. Like, he
I
didn't
thought
have
you were
a.
just gonna say A pisses me off.
Aid does piss me off. Where is he? Where are
Where
you?
is he? Where are you, A?
Where are you? What are you doing? There's a bunch of us, but we've got a real mix in our politics groups because there's an entire mix. There's people that were kind of like had a more comfortable, kind of more slightly more, cushioned
Yeah,
experience, like you talk of. There are people that went to private school. We do associate with them. We don't make them kind of like hide in the corner. We do actually associate
so
with
some of
them.
my best friends went to private school.
Some of my best friends went to private school, not mine. But and then we also have people that were like kind of like massively working class growing up, or even in the underclasses where our parents maybe had to live off benefits.
Yeah,
But I know about the misplaced shame of it. The thing is, it gives you this inherent lack of confidence, even to the point where you don't necessarily, or I can't speak for every working class people, or every person that grew up with parents on benefits, but you almost feel out of place in formal wear. Like, you
mm,
feel this really weird kind of like because I've been invited to some quite swanky events in places I never thought that I would go, and I'm standing there and I'm thinking, I don't feel right here. Like, it
yeah,
feels really weird, and it never gets any more normal. And there's also kind of, it can really impact your confidence, because if you've been kind of told you're less than, which is why I don't know why the trolls think it's going to work, because it's like, mate, I've had this for years. Like, you're not touching me. But it's interesting that the women that are on the poor end of the scale, like Angela Rayner particularly, it's always the really over low blows, like
Oh, yeah.
designed to shut you up, designed
Yeah.
always commenting on your sexuality,
Yeah.
your making out that you're a kind of gendered
Do
bad
you
term.
remember last year the whole thing about she had lived in a house and she got with who was a future husband, and she still had her old house, and she was like between the two for like a
Oh, that
couple of
was a
months,
tiny
and it was
jump. Yeah.
like they blew this all out of proportion. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson borrows £800,000 off someone for this is facilitated by this bloke who then magically became the chairman of the BBC.
And it's not just that. Look at his sex life. I
Oh
mean,
no,
look
please don't.
at for the guy's serial adulterer who
Yeah.
doesn't know how many children he has. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Angela Rayner knows how many children she's had.
But imagine if she
And
didn't. Imagine if she'd had like 7 or 8 kids to 3 or 4 different men.
oh,
What
don't
would
don't
what
don't
would
don't
the
give them any ideas.
well Trump's a good example of that. And Musk.
Oh, I mean, anything that they've done. I mean, the way that like he's just going through this weird process of just fathering loads of children, the allegations, the emotional outbursts. Can
Yeah.
you see a woman of any stripe getting away with that? And then there's the fact that they're all like massively rich.
Yeah.
Like
They were
one of
born rich.
well, they've never struggled a day in their lives. Like whereas Angela Rayner, I know, has thought about how much bread is, has thought about how much milk is, because she's probably had to count it out.
Yeah.
Like, a bunch of us have.
Yeah. Well, I inherited Daddy's company, which was worth $97 billion, and now it's worth $98 billion.
It's another
Well
level.
done.
We must. Now, Musk is
um,
starving children across the world. It's an absolute disgrace.
Orla has dropped a super chat in, or
I
Saraf.
think
Thank you very much. Shoe theory is a good way to explain how poverty is more expensive if you want to look that up. Yeah, it's more
that's
expensive
what we
to
were
be
talking
poor.
about. Yeah, that's what we were talking about
It costs
earlier.
more to take the bus into town each day than it does to drive.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Brad W, thanks very much for the £5 super chat. When Farage's end comes, we'll find out when there's a news blackout caused by old journalists and reporters going on bereavement leave. Thanks very much, Brad.
God's sake, they'll all be dressed like in these little veils at the funeral, won't they?
But think about it. If you work for a company and they've got a car park, right, all you're paying is the cost of driving in if you've already got a car, right? And if you can't afford a car, you are paying for bus fares every day. And here in Durham, it's £2.50 every time you get the bus. So it's £5 a day just to get in and out, and you're not going to pay that on with a petrol car.
No.
Or even an electric car.
I mean, and trains, they're an entirely different level. Like, and the thing is, you do end up, especially if you're kind of broke and you live in the arse end of nowhere. Because I grew up in a village, right? So once I was working in a minimum wage job in a town called Witham, Priti Patel's former constituency. Is it still her constituency? Did she retain it? I don't think she did. I don't know if she did retain Witham. Did she? Priti Patel's still an MP, is she?
I can't remember.
I can't remember. I Google it if I had.
I'm going to Google it. I'm going to Google it. I think she is still an MP because I think she's a minister, isn't she? I think so.
I think she was maybe made into a lord, wasn't she, or a lady, or one of the. She was knighted, I think.
Yeah, knighted.
But, to get there,
no, she's a shadow secretary of state. Yeah, she is for international development.
Well, the point is, Witham's quite far away from where I live. I used to have to get
shadow foreign secretary. Sorry, I read that wrong.
Oh right. In order to get to Witham, I used to have to get like an extraordinarily early Village Link bus into Braintree.
Yeah.
And then I had to get a train from Braintree, and because the way the infrastructure wasn't lined up at all, I'd be waiting for 50 minutes because I just missed the train, and I would end up doing like a good 10-hour shift, and then would end up having an extra 2 hours either side of that day just to get to a job where in the end public transport was taking up an extraordinary amount of my wages just to get to that job.
Yeah. One of the things that the government could do, for instance, is making it so that you have to pay for your employees to get to work. And when you talk about getting people back into the office, it costs people so much more, and it's regressive. Again, like I said, if you have to rely on public transport, unless you live in London where the public transport's decent, like anywhere else in the country where we don't get London allowances and our public transport shit. And if the government said, listen, if you employ someone, it's your responsibility to make sure that they can get to and from work.
Yeah.
So work from home, you don't have to pay anything. Someone comes in, you have to pay for the amount that it costs them. I'm not saying to buy everyone a Rolls Royce. I'm saying like it will cost you £5 a day to get in on the train or on the bus. So we're going to give you an extra £5 a day.
It's not just the transport. I mean, like Aid was talking, and other people have talked about this. Like if you have to work in an office and your other half's also going out to work, then you've got to pay for childcare, which is extraordinarily high. And you end up in a benefit trap, because I did ask when I was younger, I did used to say this to like my parents. I was like, well, why don't you work like other people do? And there was a bit of a benefits trap, because it would have cost my parents for childcare for us, pretty close to what they would get from their jobs or their part-time work and such. So in order to fit around, there was no benefits, were pretty much on par with the wages that they would be able to bring in. So we're like, well, fuck it. And I do understand that thought, because there was work didn't pay.
Yeah.
And to some extent it still doesn't.
It still doesn't if you're on a 0 hours contract.
And we've got people that are working 40 hours a week that are having to rely on food banks. Yeah. And that's a failure.
People who are working relying on food banks.
That's a failure.
Nurses relying on food banks. That is a catastrophic failure of the state to force these companies to pay the right amount to their employees. How can someone have a full-time job and we're paying a top up to their earnings because the company they work for, needs the profits for the shareholders, or so the CEO can buy a bigger yacht next year.
The government's paying them to undercut their own staff.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the actual, because that's what it's like with universal credit. It was a massive, massive reduction in what people were getting.
Yeah.
Because they combined the two, you ended up in a situation where you had like a massive gap. So you would end up having to take out of your food allowance, because there would be a certain council cut off or a cap on the amount of housing benefit. Yeah. Like, for example, if I needed to, take housing benefit where I live here now, I don't, but if I did need to claim for that, it would only go up to a certain amount, and then the rest of that I would have to find out of my universal credit payment, which has already been massively cut.
Yeah.
So I would end up with like 20 quid to live on for the month to eat, and the rest would have to go on my rent.
Yep.
That is absolutely insane. That's madness, the situation people were living in. And because I calculated it as, I was just trying to figure out what I would actually be entitled to. And I worked it out, and I was like, Christ, if I don't make money, I will not be able to survive. Like, I will not be able to live.
Yeah.
So they've made it dangerous, because there are people out there that don't have that choice, who might have a life-changing disability, or they might get really sick.
Yeah.
And overnight they lose their income.
Yeah.
I think pilots found that during the pandemic, didn't they? There were people that obviously couldn't fly planes, or there weren't as many flights, and they were realizing just how low like the threshold is for universal credit. Like,
well, a lot of people got stung who were self-employed, because they had, and some people self-employed didn't earn that much, just that full stop. They just didn't earn that much, but they were pulling in that they were only earning about £11,000 a year, and then they were taking the rest as dividends, so they weren't taxed at such a high rate as you are on your income, for your wages. And when it was calculated, the money you got during COVID, when that was calculated, it was calculated on your earnings. So if you said that you'd only earned £11,000 in the last year, you only got like £3,000 or something to live on, which wasn't enough for people who were trying to pay off a £500,000 mortgage or something. So a lot of people fell through the cracks. I mean, there were some people who genuinely, that's all they earned. They didn't get dividends on top of that. And there were also people who just started a business. But if you were self-employed, but you didn't have a separate business, you were caught out as well. So, not everyone did well out of COVID, but some people did. And some people did really, really well out of COVID.
Michelle Moan.
Yeah, they got all kinds of government money and bank, loans from the
Yachts.
government and all that kind of stuff. And
Just depending
again,
on how well you knew a Tory MP in your village. But if you were a
yeah,
nurse working in a bin bag, you were fucked.
yeah, pretty much. And you get COVID as well. Yuri has dropped another super chat in.
I think I can
Scotland,
see it now.
Scotland has free bus travel up to the age of 21. Thank you.
Scotland has free bus travel up to the. Thank you, Yuri. Wow. I mean, there's so many reasons to love Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Scottish are very impassioned, or have been my mentions before. You always know where you stand with a Scot, put it that way.
Yeah.
And Anthony Green, £6 super chat at question mark. Very well said, Anthony. Well said. I think we can all agree with that. If you if you type in the comments what you intended to say,
but
I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but we'll try and figure out. So
one of the things that I'm I'm trying to raise awareness with, going back to sort of private school mafia and all that, and what I'd love to be able to say to people who are voting reform and think that reform have got their best interests at heart, and they come from a working class background, or even if they're the lower middle class, is that all that Farage and all his mates have ever done in politics is to try and take things away from people like you. That's it. They don't take them away from themselves. So, for instance, he can live and work anywhere in Europe.
Absolutely.
But you can't, because you've got to apply for a visa, you've got to apply for a work permit, you've got to get a residencia, you'll be back of the queue because EU citizens will get preferential treatment. You can't buy your way to the front of the queue. Farage can. His kids have got EU passports. Tommy 10 Names, he's got an Irish passport.
Yes, he has.
They don't take it away from themselves. And you'll see whenever rich, privileged wankers like that loser fox creep, right? Whenever the law applies to them as well as everyone else, they lose their fucking minds. You saw what they were like during the pandemic. It was all the rich people. It was all the private educated people who were going, oh, well, in the Magna Carta, it says I don't have to wear a mask and I can go to the pub. And I'm like, it doesn't. What do you want about? Whereas everyone else just said, okay. And I do really think that, I don't know, my experience of growing up in Liverpool, there was a lot more compassion. There just was. And there seems to be an absolute lack of empathy, lack of compassion at the upper echelons. Was that your experience growing up, or?
I mean, our community was tight because I think we had to be, really.
Yeah.
And also, not just that, but it was very family oriented because I had my auntie lived next door to me in the council house next door. My nan lived in a council house around the corner. My dad's parents were a bit richer. My granddad, actually, on my dad's side, worked for Alan Sugar. And they moved from London to Felsted, and they lived in kind of quite a bigger detached house, like about a mile down the road. And that's how my parents ended up meeting, was when they moved from East London to the village that I grew up in. But in our kind of bit, because there wasn't a lot of council housing in Felsted, like where I grew up. So it was just like a couple of banks of it on the kind of edge of all this kind of like affluence. So we all stuck up for each other and we all looked out for each other. Like, for example, there was like the local boys who lived in the council houses really looked out for us when it came to the posh boys who used to always try and grope us and catcall us and degrade us and were horrible. They would get their lights punched out by our mates around the road. Like they would just jump them, any excuse, it's like you've fucked up now. So we had that kind of like sense of community. And it was a lot of events, like our community events, all happened in the little local memorial hall because no one could afford to go into town, and so everyone would do everything in the village. And it was all it was nice from that perspective. We all stuck together. But I think the problem that we're seeing now with reform is a lot of this is really strongly linked to the conspiracy pipeline. And our we've inherited a lot of that from America. It was filtering in pre-COVID and it peaked and it started peaking around the time of COVID. Because your experience, what you were talking about with posh people not wanting to wear masks, unfortunately, there are a lot of the kind of like working and lower classes filling the beaches up and just treating it as a laugh and not really caring
Yeah.
about having parties too. But they were actually held accountable, whereas
Yeah.
the people
Yes, they were fined.
were doing it every
Yeah.
night in number 10s. There was a massive, like, that is a class and a, you know, accountability.
So you mentioned Alan Sugar. So he grew up poor. He grew up in a council house, but he was part of the Jewish community. And like I've got a lot of friends in the Liverpool Jewish community, and they look out for each other. And the working class used to look out for each other. But I think what's happened more recently is because we've become more atomized. We don't talk to our neighbours as much. We don't have as much of a community as we used to because we're all looking at our phones. We're all like living our own lives. We've got our Facebook friends and things like that. People aren't going to church every week. People aren't meeting in the town hall to go and roast the politicians. That doesn't really happen much. So when do you meet people? Like, especially as you approach middle age, like, where do you go?
Myself on roasting the politicians. But no, I see what you mean. Everyone is like, there's actually even a term for it. It's called tech neck. People are getting tech neck. They think my shoulder injury might possibly be RSI from using my phone and filming. But yeah, this is a real problem. And the problem is it's such an effective radicalization tool because they know the Farage, etc., Bannon, Trump, they're all using the same playbook. They know how to get to people. They also don't just know the kind of psychology of people. They have the millions to fund racist, divisive, fear-inducing content in people. And this is the problem that we've got. I remember not even 5 years ago, you wouldn't have people in Britain, like lots of people in Britain, like going, oh, but is the world flat though? You wouldn't have it. It was insane. And once you fall into one, the problem is it kind of like you get exposed to more because that's how the algorithms work, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'm thinking about getting a Brita water filter. I'll just be inundated with like filters. All you got to do is Google one.
They know that outrage sells better, and that idea that you've unlocked some top secret knowledge that outweighs what every pediatrician in the world knows.
Lumber syndrome, isn't it?
Definitely the hero of your own. But one of the things I was going to say is like talking about community is I really do feel like I would like Labour to be pushing for more community stuff going on. I was always inspired when I was younger. I was in Australia and in Ballarat in Australia, which is just Ballarat, which is the northwest of Melbourne. They one day they just got the community together. It was like Challenge Annika, and they built a kids' playground. It was just all locals. They turned up with the materials, and everyone helped out. And there were little old ladies giving out tea and biscuits and all that. It was just a community came together. And I was thinking, we don't do that. We just don't do that. We might have done in the past, but the rich don't need that community. They've got it. I was going to mention about Alan Sugar. He's the outrider in terms of entrepreneurs. You think of an entrepreneur, Richard Branson, private school, Dyson, private school, Tim Martin, who owns all the fucking Wetherspoons, private school, Elon Musk, private school, his dad owned a bloody emerald mine, Trump, private school. So all these these businessmen, millionaires, billionaires, generally speaking, they come from money. I'm not all of them, clearly, but it's I think it's probably 8% don't. That 8% number
there is
coming back.
Yeah, I mean, mind you, what you said about community, we did see a glimpse of that, and it really cheered me. And it was the reaction to the Southport attacks and the riots and the far right riots.
Yeah.
And the way that the community have all, I mean, first of all, the parents of those kids are classy as hell, man. The way that they've handled it is so commendable. Yeah. And then you've got the community that came out and helped to tidy up and helped to fix the wall in front of the mosque. And that, when people ask me what makes me proud to be British, that's the first thing that pops into my head, besides obviously, roast dinners, is the way that community came together and reacted to their town being descended upon by tinny, swilling, coked up scumbags who thought it was, after a shockingly violent incident, thought it was good to scare the kids as they were going to bed by screaming and shouting and throwing big bricks in the street. You know, it was that was nice, but that was sadly a reaction to the horrors, wasn't it? But I can see the super chat now. Sorry, we've got one from Alistair Kurt. I always say your name wrong, and I'm so sorry. Tan, here's a list free bus travel, no peak rate fares on trains, baby box free dental care for under 25, free university PIP done by medical staff, winter fuel going to be payment. I could go up. Right, I'm sorry, I butchered that because it didn't make sense.
Well, it's a list. It's a list of things, isn't it? But it's all written out in a because
I'm so sorry.
You got a limited number of characters. So it's trying to put a shopping list into a tweet.
It was like I was doing a bloody it was like I was doing an interpretive like rap really fucking badly. Sorry about that. And then your next one's much easier. Thank you again. All done on a budget, 15% less than the last 5 years. No, it's still I still feel like I'm having a stroke. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Alistair.
I don't know.
And Kieran's just dropped a super chat in there as well.
Oh, hang on a minute. I've got a thing here from Mark Camilleri. I know the area, Tan. Headingham, Bulmer, Bures, Housestead, posh girl, basically pretending to be straight. What immigration did you ever see? No reform is our people. Mate, you are radicalised. I'm not posh. I don't have to speak like Towie in order to be certified working class. That's not where I'm from. Actually, and I don't have to explain my backstory to you, but what you need to know is that the people that are telling you to hate people are going to profit in the millions from getting you to hate people, whereas I'll still be, I don't know what I'll remain working class till I die probably. So have a think about that.
Imagine being so lazy that you can't be bothered thinking for yourself, and you need to get the private school mafia like Farage and Tice and like everyone involved in the upper echelons of the company known as Reform, or Refuck as we like to call them. Imagine thinking, this posh person speaks for me. That posh person has my best interests at heart. That posh person who's had no effect on his life. He rode the EU gravy train. He was getting £1 million a year, and he was giving it to his wife, his mistress. And that was taxpayers' money. That he was
hanging out with the far right.
Whilst hanging out with Nazis.
Actual Nazis. But that's patriotism, is it? Hanging out with Nazis.
Well, apparently so, Tan. Apparently so. I mean, that's patriotism these days, thinking that the wrong guys lost World War II.
I mean, where's your self but where's your self-inspect, mate? Yeah. I mean, think about it. Think about how much better off you were before 2016, before Brexit. Think about it. Think about where we were. Think about how much money you had coming in, and look at yourself now.
Farage has done so well for himself, hasn't he? He's earned £800,000 so far since he's become an MP. £800,000 flogging gold. How much gold have you bought in the last year, Tan?
Gold bullion. It was like,
how much gold have you bought?
About this today. Oh yeah, I've bought loads, man. I think I've got a pound in my bag, literally a pound. But he made 189k last year as a part-time gold bullion, working in gold bullion part-time. That's one of his side hustles. He was on an extraordinary amount of GB News, who incidentally are funded by foreign investors.
Yeah. So oil companies.
Oil companies, right? Saudis.
The Saudis. The fucking Saudis. I'm in love with this. Saudis. How come the Saudis get away with everything, Tan? Like, they did 9/11. And everyone goes, oh, no, it was an inside. I'm like, no, it was a bloody Saudis. Oh, quick, let's invade Afghanistan. No, Saudi Arabia. They're the people who did it. Okay, let's invade Iraq. That'll stop them. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm not making this clear. It was funded by the Saudis. It was masterminded by the Saudis. 15 of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. It was the fucking Saudis. And yet everyone's like, no, it couldn't have been them. They're lovely people, you know, especially when they're hanging gay people for being gay. Or, you know, whipping women for being raped, stoning them to death even, where they bury them up to their necks in the bloody, in the soil. And throw stones at them.
In foreign consulates.
They're such nice people. Yeah, 90% of their income comes from oil, and they have a very, 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 very large vested interest. We're talking about trillions of dollars here in keeping us dependent on their oil, and they're very good at it. And anyone
Yeah.
who votes for, Trump or Farage or that, they're jumping on the Saudi Arabian gravy train. And the funny thing is, a lot of these people are quite anti-Muslim.
It's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, Islamophobia is the new kind of like, I mean, what used to be the old school, targets of fascism. Now it's Muslims and trans people, obviously.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that Richard Murphy video that everyone's been sharing. He's a good economist, don't get me wrong. I don't have any personal beef with him. I think he went a bit too hard on Labour when they were in opposition instead of the government. But he did a video talking about reform because he thinks they're going to fizzle out. And I don't think they are at all, because I think he's applying old rules to reform and this political situation that we find ourselves in. And that's a massive error that a lot of people are falling into. And his argument was like, oh, he's not accountable. He buckles under scrutiny. And it's like, mate, that's not stopped him from running again, despite the absolute nightmare of Brexit.
Yeah.
What on earth makes you think that the people that are voting for him care about accountability or even care about politics? Yeah. It's not even. They see him as a protest. They've drunk the Kool-Aid. They think that he is not establishment. I can't say it without laughing. They think he's anti-establishment and that it's a protest. All you're getting is peak Tory, but with just more overt racism. Yeah. They're all funded by oil barons and
they all went to private school. Like they got that leg up that most people, 93% of us who didn't go to private school, can't even fucking imagine.
All super rich, but the problem is they're very clever at how they're targeting people, extremely clever and adept at it.
Yes.
And the people that you're trying to talk to, because people always go, don't, as I was saying earlier, don't call them thick, don't insult them. It's like, oh, it's right for them to call me a pedo every day, or say that I
don't call them thick. I just call them lazy. They can't even bother thinking for themselves, Tan. They get some dinosaur from Australia who was born 1 million years ago and lives in America. They get him, Murdoch. They get Murdoch to do the thinking for them. Imagine being that lazy. You can't be arsed using your own brain. I'm not saying you have to get, catch the 5K or nothing. I'm saying just like literally sitting there using your own head. Nah, it's too much, mate. I'm too lazy. I can't be arsed. I'll get someone else to do me thinking for me.
Graham, in the old days, right, you had to go to a library to look something up. All you've got to do is open a window on your phone to fact check something. But this is the point. I don't think they want to, and they won't respond to any reason or facts, because they will come up with something like, oh, the deep state did it.
The deep state.
Or if you bring up, if there's an article that's attacking Labour that's by a liberal paper, they'll go, oh, look at this, look what the Guardian's saying. But if it's proving that Nigel is dodgy as fuck, they'll go, oh, MSN, don't trust them, like, don't trust the MSN, like.
The deep state. Who the fuck is the deep state? The Tories were in charge for 14 years. Trump is the president. He completely controls Wall Street, as we see. He controls
everything now directly. Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, the deep state. There's another layer of it. Where? Who? Oh, it's the trans people. What?
It's so convenient though, because it's what they can. It's what they can blame everything on, but it's not provable.
Yeah.
Right. So they go, oh, it's the deep state. Well, why can't you prove it? Well, because it's the deep state. It's like, mate, we're in a circle here. It's going nowhere. And then you end up, it's like trying to explain maths to fucking geese. You just end up with your head off the wall. You get nowhere with it.
Yeah.
And this is the problem that we have, is that it's like they see him as some kind of like weird populist, cult figure. They don't even think of him as a politician. They're not thinking about what he would do with power, which is essentially turn Britain into MAGA UK. Mind you, his supporters were cheering people possibly losing their jobs at the council.
Yeah.
That's very patriotic.
Something that councils don't have, they can't hire and fire. But, they're going to get rid of the trans Pelican crossing here in Durham. That's actually in London. That'll show them.
Aid's video on this was absolutely genius. He made a comparison between Grimes And he was draped in the flag. He goes, they hate our flags. They want to burn our flags. I can't do a Geordie accent. Way, eh, man. And then you've got like the first thing Grimes and Reform want to do: ban the trans flag, ban the pride flag. It's like, oh, you weird hypocrites.
No, they are. I mean, that they want to. They touch on these culture war shit, and it makes them more money. Like the people who own the platforms are making money out of outrage. And you and I know that if we were spouting off the right wing shite that, you know, some people who vote for reform we'll make loads more money. We'll make absolutely shit tons. We would have some privately, you know, some mysteriously funded think tank backing us, and we'll be earning 50, 100, 150 grand a year just off that. Absolutely. And then we'll make our content as usual, but we'd have an advertising budget. We'd be able to pay someone to do the editing, to do the graphics, to do all this kind of stuff, you know, and it will take us to another level. But here's the thing: like, no one who's a millionaire wants to fund left-wing content. Why? Because there's no ROI. There is no return on investment. If you back right-wing content and you're a millionaire, it means along the line, you know, if you get your message out and you get people to vote Tory or vote for refuck, less tax. You have to pay less tax.
Less tax, or you get away with your crimes.
Yes. Stay out of jail, pay less tax. So there's a definite return on investment. What's the return on investment if you're a millionaire and you fund a left-wing channel? Nothing.
You're not going to get anything
You'd
back.
have to do it out of the goodness of your heart. But I think when you hit a million, you lose all goodness. And when you hit 1 billion, I think you should be put to death and all your money to be spread amongst the people.
We've talked about this. Luigi would.
You get a medal. It says I won.
And then Luigi comes out and, and then he goes up to Aid for his blowjob. But he goes to Aid and presents himself. Anyway, we're talking about Aid as if he's died. I hope he hasn't. I'm sure he's okay.
No, he's fine.
The F your bins, and he and I spend arguably way too much time exchanging obscenities. In a chat. Like
we just have an unusual sense of humour. That's all.
We take it too far every single time. I mean, there have been memes that I've even thought were over the line, you know. But did I miss a super chat, or did I?
Yeah, there's a couple of super chats. There's one from Kieran saying watching on catch up.
Oh, hello. One. Hello, Kieran, watching on catch up. You're in the future now. I'm in the future now. I don't know what time and place it is. Felt a bit Red Dwarf there. People have compared my floating head on some videos to Holly from Red Dwarf. Yeah, I mean, I think they're blind.
And then there's Alice Durham, put £2 in to say we need more mods. And what I've done, Alice Durham, I've made you a mod. So there you go. You volunteered for a job there, but thanks for the super chat.
You've made him a mod.
I've made him a mod. Yes.
I don't know this person.
Oh, he's lovely. No, it just means that they can get rid of any trolls if the trolls come on.
Oh, so he's like our bouncer.
Yes.
Alice.
But it's just in the chat. They can't change your.
Alice Durham is the bouncer. Well, use your powers wisely.
Kirsty is in there as well.
Okie doke. Kirsty McTeer.
Yeah. Kirsty's one of our friends from fighting Brexit days.
Is that a real surname?
Yeah.
That's a brilliant surname. That's like, as someone that likes to think of themselves as being a bit emo, that's a really great surname. So I feel like a McTeer sometimes.
Just a wee help.
Just a wee help. Oh, thank you, my love.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Very kind. Yeah, thank you.
Kirsty's great. We like Kirsty.
Have I missed anything else?
I think that's all of them.
Yeah, I like the existential feeling of talking to someone in the future and then it kind of coming back.
Yeah.
I think the reason that this whole concept of what we've been talking about tonight crossed my mind is because I have actually been listening to a lot of old pulp in preparation for their forthcoming album. So it's not out yet, is it? I think there's only a single that we've got. I think it's June.
But Wolf Alice's new single's out this week, and I read a snippet of it, and it sounds boss.
Do you know what? After you mentioned Wolf Alice, I went down a little rabbit hole and I realised obviously that I was already following them. And past me, I was like, wow, well done, past me. You made a good... They've got a really cool sound about them. So I'm going to definitely follow them now. I also recommend Thought Squad, who have been getting me through a lot.
What are they called?
Like Thought Squad. So it's almost THOT. squad, and the rapper is Black Bunny, and she is epic. There's a tune called Abandon Him, and there's another one, Hose Depressed. It's kind of like Missy Elliott, 90s style, really dirty hip hoppy beats. It's really good. I sound like such a twat right now. I'm gonna trail off and read a super chat from Darian Dastar. Great name. Typical discrimination. We've got all the mods, but where are the rockers? I was gonna make a joke how, we are the mods. We are the mods. About
Martin Harrow's just singing that in the chat. We are the mods. Yeah, but we are the mods. We are the mods.
We are the mods. What was that? That was fucking
Quadrophenia?
Boosh, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? Okay.
I think it was Mighty Boosh.
Get me mod references mixed up.
Because I always think of like Paul Weller.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like one of the Paul Weller, King of the Mods.
King of the Mods.
Who was singing that? That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Who was?
But yeah, Kirsty's saying Crafty Wank is indeed gay. Used to work on the tills at M&S Metro Centre. Ex-Lib Dem in them days, was quite pleasant. Like he was a young working class lad who was completely radicalised by these horrible posh old men who have completely taken advantage of him. And in some ways, I feel sorry for him. I don't feel that sorry for him that I'm not going to hassle him in the Durham County Council meetings from this point on. I can see why people fall down this rabbit hole and think that Farage is speaking for them. And part of it is to blame for the media. But I think a huge part of this, I've got to blame Labour and the Lib Dems and the Greens for failing to connect with people, failing to bridge that class divide, which Lib Dems are seen as a very middle class vote. The Greens, like I said, I can't think of a working class Green that really sticks out in my head.
Do you know something else though, Graham? Yeah. Neither Labour, Lib Dems, Green, they don't lie in their political campaigns or ads, whereas vast swathes of Tory ads are proven to be false. They don't implement like bot farms. They don't get the coverage on the telly. They don't get platformed. And people tend to buy what they see. A lot of all you've got to, you can recognize a McDonald's ad from a whistle, for fuck's sake. I mean, this is the same kind of thing that's being applied to reform. They are just able to
more of a dog whistle though, isn't it?
But they can get themselves, they're just like gloop, they're just like, they're everywhere. Tice, he's essentially a co-host on Question Time now. What was it? 30 odd times Farage has been platformed.
On Question Time, he's been on 38 times. 38 times.
Tice was on again. And
Tice has been on every 2 minutes.
It is just, and people go, well, he gets his arse handed to him. It doesn't matter. People aren't listening to that. Yeah. And this is the problem this is post-truth era. This is the post-truth era. This is conspiracy is believed broadly. And you've got people kind of affirming those, because you've got AI propaganda ads.
Yeah, but do you feel like you're taking Labour? Are you letting them off the hook here? Because I think they could do so much better. You have more subscribers on this channel than Labour do on their, last time I checked, than Labour do on their channel here on YouTube. Because they only put on like adverts for Labour. Who's going to watch an advert? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what you skip past. That's what you press the skip button for. And then you miss the skip button. You end up going to the thing that's trying to sell you that thing. And you're like, oh my God, go back to YouTube. And then you go back to YouTube and you lose your place in it. And God, I hate adverts. Anyway.
It makes it worse if you've got ADHD, because you'll get navigated away. And then 2 hours later, when you're down a rabbit hole doing something else, you think, oh shit, I'm watching a video.
But you end up getting loads of like adverts for like garden gnomes or something daft that you've accidentally pressed. And you're like, oh no, I'm trying to... Stupid. But
then sometimes you're like, could maybe do with a gnome though. Yeah. I've never had one before. Then you add it to the ridiculous amount of mad things you bought on a whim for dopamine. But
Urban Agog in the chat is saying Tan should definitely go on Question Time. Should go so viral.
Are you joking?
You'll be brilliant on Question Time.
It depends. I'd have to be really wound up by someone in order to overcome my fear.
Yeah.
If I was on. And I'm trying to think about who they could put on for me to be sufficiently angry enough Oh, Lee Anderson. I could rip Lee Anderson a new one easily. But I didn't go to private school.
Neither
So
did Lee Anderson.
getting on, yeah, but he's a fucking turncoat, isn't he? He's got in
He's in
there
with
with
them.
all the he's just like the slut of rosettes. He's like he puts one on, put another one on, put another one on, change something. But he's I mean, again, Tyson Farage, it wouldn't be particularly difficult.
Yeah.
But I've heard like so many stories about Tice because he used to go on Byline TV. And some of the behind the scenes stuff, he would sue the fuck out of me if I told you what he was up to. But your worst fears about that man are probably completely
Well,
accurate.
Exotic Dollar saying Tice is my MP. He splits his time between Dubai and Lincolnshire. Because his bird, Oaken shit, who's privately educated, of course.
Terrifying woman.
Yeah, she lives in Dubai now full time, doesn't she? Because Britain's so bad that it's turned her into an immigrant.
She's so
She was sick of
patriotic.
the immigrants, so she became one.
But no, I'm trying to. I don't think I could like oak shit. Like I think I could possibly tear her a new one.
But the problem is, Tan, the immigrants that they come over and they don't integrate. So we should find out from Oaken shit if how Arabic is coming up. Because I'm sure she's fluent in it now. She's been there a year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sure that she's read the entire Quran, obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
That makes me so angry as well. The whole concept of like, oh, you don't integrate, yet we're out on the streets dragging you out of cars and punching you for being black about a year ago. But you must integrate. But we don't want you here. But integrate. Don't stay in your own communities. We hate you. We want you to go, but integrate. It's like
yeah, to bring it back to class. This is something that the right wing have been very, very successful at: is scapegoating immigrants for all the problems that have actually been caused by the upper class.
Absolutely. I mean,
privatization was an upper class wheeze to sell off the national treasures to private equity, and now it's all privatized. It's all to do with the profits for the shareholders, and nothing to do with us, as the citizens of this country. And it's like, oh, why is my life so shit? Why haven't I got these opportunities? And it's like, well, first of all the cool jobs are taken by the private school mafia. But aside from that, it's the immigrants.
It's unbelievable.
Or the trans people.
Schrodinger's immigrant or Schrodinger's trans person.
Yeah.
And the problem is, before this, it was poor people, poor people. Oh, look at them taking all your money with their big tellies and their packets of cigarettes and, their phones. And now they're starting to gradually bring in the whole disability. Yeah. I mean, the horrific things that Farage has said about women, about disabled people.
Yep.
And when people are blind red things that like reform are going to do, or they're asked, could you afford to go private on the NHS? And they're like, of course not. Well, did you know Farage has done this? Yeah. They're shocked. Like they don't know because they're not reading the policy. They're just responding to rhetoric. And it's, as you said, lazy.
This is the way politics has gone. And I do think there is some blame to be taken on our side of this, that we aren't responding. Or, I mean, I don't think there's much that you and I can do. We do our best, but like Labour should be responding to this.
No, I agree.
Understanding what the issue is. It's not about policy. It's about ubiquity. It's about being always on telly, always in the headlines, always on the front cover of every fucking newspaper in the land. And Farage understands that. Trump understands that. I mean, Tice understands it to the point where, he'll stand aside for Farage because he knows that Farage is popular, whereas Tice is just inherently unlikable. I mean, I find Farage unlikable, but a lot of people seem to think he's all right. But no one likes Tice.
That's very weird because out of the two of them, like I find Farage infinitely more despicable.
Yes.
But they are. Yeah,
they're both pretty horrible
on the front of on Labour, because I think, like we discussed this the last couple of times, like I find their approach in terms of repeating or pandering to the reform base to be not just dangerous and essentially legitimizing far-right rhetoric, but idiotic political strategy.
Yeah.
So they're not just going to tear the fabric of society, they're going to lose their core voter base, and the people that they're trying to target will think, oh, right, well, it's all right to think this. I'm going to go vote for reform then.
Yeah, you're right.
They're not going to turn around and vote Labour. They're going to lose all their credibility, and it's not going to work. It's not going to improve people's lot in society doing that. It's just going to further divide people, and they're still going down this route. And the thing that I read the day after the local elections that was coming out from fucking McSweeney, who needs to get sacked. I mean, Starmer needs to decide, will I win the next election or will I still have McSweeney at this point? The stuff that was coming out about them doubling down on immigration rhetoric, I actually said fucking hell out loud. I put my head in my hands and I was like, you idiots, what are you doing? What
you
are you doing?
Can't out Farage. Don't even try.
No, what you've got to do is you've got to improve and stop this radicalisation process with the things you can do, like media reform, like actual proper legislation and action on the social media companies. Even though that ship's long sailed, at least you could try. And you could also try and implement awareness in schools at a young age about critical thinking and disinformation and misinformation and how to spot it. Things like that are what people need. But sadly, we are seeing people of all age groups falling into this. But we are also, unfortunately, and I don't mean any offence to any older viewers that I have, but it is the same kind of age bracket that gave us Brexit. It is pretty much the mainstay is that bracket of people.
But not all boomers. Not all boomers. Not all boomers.
I've got some really cool older folk that follow me and they're legends.
I've got a little pop-up that comes up that says not all boomers.
I need a thing that says not all boomers.
No, I've got it. I just put it up for the stream.
Did you?
Yeah, it said not all boomers. It will come up in about 30 seconds. We got a super chat from Ruth. Do you want to read it or shall I?
Okay. I'm just trying to catch up because I'm having a few charges.
And also, Alistair has bought 5 memberships to your channel.
Alistair, thank you. That's very kind of you. I can't actually see it.
It's a green one. It's just after Darian's £10 one.
Sorry. Ruth Guthrie, yeah, £5.
Yeah, that's the one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
2 Davies is donated to food and baby banks throughout. Great show. Great show as always. What's the 2 Davies?
I don't know. We like the 2 Ronnies.
What is the 2 Davies?
I don't know.
That's a very that sounds familiar to me. I don't know if I've heard of that.
Must be another YouTube channel. Maybe we should check it out.
Another YouTube channel. There are other YouTube channels.
Oh my god, it's disgraceful.
You mean people don't tune in just for my appalling? I mean, I was supposed to have, guys, my proper camera. At least I've got a proper mic. I'm gradually becoming a fully fledged, actual functioning streamer, like week by week. But I want to say a massive thank you, obviously, to Graham, because the thing is, us lot, we all kind of like pitch in and help each other out. We're our own little kind of community of people. And without Graham's production and help, I wouldn't be at the point of streaming yet, because he's kind of like kicked me up the bum to do it. And he's also...
Not literally.
No, he's too far away for that.
Yeah, need a very, very long leg.
It's not his style. He'd rather use a cattle prod. But no, you've been great in terms of helping with like the production. And I just saw the not all boomers sign. That's brilliant.
Political Alex has just put to Scott to run a YouTube channel. So is that oh god, what was his name? There's a guy called Trucker Davy, or he drives a truck. I've forgotten his name is Trucker Davy or something. Oh my god. Sorry, someone fill me in the chat who the 2 Davies are from Scotland. Davy Trucker. Oh, I can't remember what his name was. Alistair, do you want me to read out the super chats? Sorry, the super gifts, the gift memberships.
I can't see it. Sorry, I'm having a nightmare.
Well, I'll just say welcome to the new members of Tanskii's channel. Ruth and Martin, UK Medsy, Wayne and Kevsy have all been given a membership by Alistair. So thank you so much, Alistair.
That's very kind of you, me love.
Very kind of you.
Thank you.
Great Scottish guys, 2 Davies, do Scottish debate. Any super chat goes to baby banks, food banks in Scotland. Tan. Yeah, Indie Truck Davy. That's his name. Indie Truck Davy. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to make a note of with
Yeah,
that.
he should. He's really good. He's really good.
In the trunk,
Yeah.
Dave. So yeah, I'm at a bit of a loss broadly about how we can stop the rise of reform, because it is a question. And the thing that annoys me is a lot of people say talking about them is what you shouldn't be doing because everyone else is talking about them. But we critically discuss them. We don't sit there and go, do you know what? They're brilliant. They're spot on. We criticize them. We hold them accountable. We reveal their shady links. We reveal their lies. I'm really worried about how we're going to counter them, because this isn't like countering the Tories.
Yeah.
Even the Tories in the end eventually faced accountability. Now, my theory for the one thing that I think could topple Farage and stop the rise of reform would be Trump crashing and burning spectacularly, because he's just cosplaying as Trump, and this is like MAGA UK, pretty much.
But he's not being tied to Trump in the same way that the Conservatives in Canada and the coalition in Australia were tied to him. And they did really badly in their elections last week because everyone just went, they're just Trump, and everyone hates Trump. Even in this country, Conservative voters hate Trump because he's disgusting.
I think if we'd had our election, actually, I don't know how it'd have gone, considering everything. But they had their, I was going to say erection. They had their election just after the nightmare of Trump happened, and obviously Canada are pretty close to matters. And Australia got a bit burnt by despite having a trade agreement, getting kind of like mad tariffs implemented and all that kind of stuff. So they had their kind of like general elections just after Trump's general election, whereas we were just before, and then there were kind of like out of control race riots and awful things happening here, weren't there? And I mean, Labour, I don't let them off the hook, especially not now. But they have inherited madness in the terms of that kind of like crazy first. It was literally their first few weeks, wasn't it, on the job during the summer holidays when that was all kicking off, and the decline. I mean, they could obviously be pushing back on Brexit more, which I think we're going to see. I hope we're going to see more of. And they need to be countering this. And the fact they're not is head in your hand stuff. I can't.
Well, look, this is what I'm thinking. So, like, what can we do? So, things that I'm doing here in Durham, thankfully, in my particular ward, I've got 2 Green councillors. I'm going to meet with one of them next week and talk about, going to council meetings, getting involved, finding out what they're up to, what we fuck are up to. I'm also getting more heavily involved in my local Labour group here. I'm in a group that includes our MP, who's a Labour MP, Mary Foy, and really, really, getting involved in that, trying to help them, trying to help the Lib Dems, the Greens, Labour, all of them do better, because at the moment they're getting their arses handed to them. And I know Lib Dems did quite well in the last local elections, but up against reform, it's something else. And I don't think that they quite understand that the landscape, the political landscape, has changed so much since the internet, since YouTube. But it's been 20 years now. We've had 20 years of YouTube, and
TikTok now.
This magical device in people's pocket, your phone, that allows you to broadcast to every single human being on the planet live, and they're just not using it at all. How good would it be to have like a show presented by, say, Clive Lewis once a week on the Labour channel? I'd watch that.
I would 100%. Every time he speaks, he pretty much speaks for me. Like, I'm not going to put him on a pedestal, but if I could choose a prime minister, it would probably be Clive Lewis, because he speaks for what I believe in the most. But no,
they don't do that, and Farage does it. Farage talks to people, and he knows how to do it. He was on LBC, he was on GB News, he was on Russia Today. He's always on the telly. He's always around. Look at his fucking ugly face every bloody day. He knows what he's doing.
No, he does. And there's no real excuse for it. But we have tried with Labour. Like, they approached us, a bunch of us early on, to try and get us to do content that was kind of like putting out their party lines. I was like, well, not if you're not paying me. And secondly, I'm not just a script generator for Labour. And then that faded out. They don't even know how to approach people that are like us lot, that have built our own organic followings. They don't even know how to approach us and get us to help them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us would have been very willing due to our personal political leanings. I mean, Phil was a member, I was a Labour member. Lib Dems I don't have an enormous amount of beef with. I think I think they're all right. I think the Greens are all right. But the approach they go down of throwing away kind of like real talent that can connect with people in favour of just little posh agencies that are putting out shit memes that were like funny 10 years ago, when they need to be
they weren't funny 10 years ago either.
They weren't funny 10 years ago.
And even less funny and less relevant.
But also, the people that would watch or understand what that meme even means isn't even the people they should be targeting.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? It makes no sense, and there's no excuse for it. But I think it's also head in the sand denial. I think they're denying, or they don't want to admit that this is the landscape now. Yeah. So, like, as I said, like The Economist, Richard Murphy, a few other people, they're applying the old rules to this. And what you need to do, frankly, in order to play reform at their own game, is get your own bot farm, get your own, flood social media with the opposing message or messages of unity and hope and togetherness and all that bloody shit. That's what you need to do to bring us back together, because that's where people are getting their information, and terrifyingly, their news. So it's like, you really don't want to be in a situation where I mean, they've already let it get on top of them. But if I think
you're absolutely right, but that's not for me and you to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would do that if I had the money, but we don't. The people who have the money should be doing that. But what I think you do really well is building a community, like having the group of people who are watching this now, and then the people who watch your channels and communicate with you.
They're lovely.
They're lovely. And the horrible thing is that, like, you know, you're like me, like most people, you get one horrible comment and it stays with you. You know, you can't shake it. And it's like, you just had 100 nice things said about you. And then that one horrible thing is just like, it rattles your soul. Do you know what I mean?
Sometimes some are worse than others. I mean, like, I was compiling a list of some of the worst the other day for there's like a little funny trend thing that people are doing on Instagram where it's like fan mail, and it's women that kind of like start the video with like a smile, and then they go through all the awful comments that men leave. And for me, I've had to develop like some kind of like shutdown in my brain for that stuff. But it's not just the fact that we're just regular people that are just trying to keep the lights on. We're not rich. But it's so like deeply personal and upsetting to people with ADHD to have that, because we have kind of like a thing called RSD, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria, where we kind of automatically think everyone hates us all the time anyway, and we have kind of quite bad imposter syndrome, and we can take negative feedback it really hurts us, you know. So having to kind of like, for us having to wade through years of that just to kind of give our opinion on stuff, it's really bad. And then people try and justify it by going, oh well, you give it though, and I'm like, yeah, to the
rich, you're punching down,
and I only kind of like, I might occasionally snap back at someone that's horrible to me, but they'd have done that first. Like, I don't go around just like picking fights online. But it's that's getting so much worse. I mean, Twitter's frankly unusable for a woman now. I mean, women are being forced off that platform. Black people are being forced off. Muslim people are being forced off. You know, gay people are being forced off.
And then the bloody trolls come over to Threads. They come over to Blue Sky, and you're like, we came here to get away from you. No, you've got to listen to what I have to say. And I'm like, no, we don't have to listen to what you say. I don't want to listen to what you say. If you have your own pub, would you invite someone in who came and sat there at the bar calling you a twat all night? Do you know what I mean? You'd be like, fuck off, this is my pub. I'm not having you sitting there. Oh, freedom of speech, mate. No, it's my pub. Piss off. I just don't understand the mentality of people who are like, I've got to tell these people what I think of them.
Mate, it's even worse. Like, as a woman, I find that a guy the other day on TikTok made a really mad comment.
Yeah.
He was trying to talk about abortion, right? He was trying to lecture me, a woman, on abortion, right? I've never had one myself, but I think women should have a choice to. And there was him kind of using his apparent Christianness to try and like school me on abortion. And I was like, do you know what? Just blocked him. And then I went onto Instagram, which is kind of a place that I just use for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
You might get a political meme, you might get a thirst trap. Nobody knows what they're going to get there. It's like tombola. And I look in the comments of one of my meme posts from like weeks ago, and it's fucking him going, "You blocked me on TikTok."
Yes.
So I just publicly shamed him on my story, and I said, "Oh, this guy doesn't accept no, because this is a consent thing, right? This guy doesn't accept no. To all the men, his inbox is open. So the men that follow me, if you want to message him, I think that means that he wants to receive messages, right?" And loads of the men that follow me were like sending me screenshots of them kind of like him getting really upset that they had messaged him without his consent. And it was like,
yeah.
Well, but they will follow you, they will hound you across platforms. Like some of the worst on Twitter have tried to do the same to me on Blue Sky. When I couldn't even use my username on Blue Sky because they nicked it.
Yeah.
And like boasting about it. Oh, took the bitch's username.
Tell you what, heterosexual men understand consent when they're in a gay bar.
Absolutely. Or in a prison shower.
In the prison shower, quite indeed. We got another super chat that came in from Ruth, which is very kind.
Thank you, Ruth. Sorry, is this kind of a bit further up? I'm sorry.
It's a green one.
It's a green one. Anthony Green, also welcome to F the Tories. Appreciate it. Ruth Guthrie, £5. Thank you. I think if you took more interest in Scottish politics, you might understand yours better by comparison. That's not meant as a slur. Love you both. Yeah, it is an interesting one, Scottish politics. My view on it has always been very much of the perspective that I understand why you want to leave the uni. Like, I get it. Yeah. I've always thought if I was in your position, I live in Essex, mate, and I want to leave Westminster. I don't want to be a part of it. But I understand, because obviously you have your natural resources plundered and you're told...
And they voted to stay in the EU by over 60%.
They voted
and they were dragged out of the EU by some dickheads down in fucking Kent.
This is true. We also, if it helps, us lot, like us decent people in Essex can't stand Kentonians. Although in the local, it wasn't all reform. There was a Green and a Lib Dem council there too. So there are some bits.
I'm just amazed that I'm in this island of green in County Durham. Like, so many councils. There's over 60 councillors that got me fucked now. And both my councillors were Greens.
I fear reading local kind of Gazette posts and reading local kind of like community pages. I fear about what would have happened if we had council elections. I don't know how it would have gone. I know my local councillor. She's brilliant. She's done so much for our local area, brightened it up, brought a bit of colour, put lovely murals, cleaned up all the kind of like the galleyways to make them more welcoming, got rid of crime, got kids involved in initiatives, like really great hands-on councillor.
Yeah.
And then weirdly, the richest part of the town is actually Green.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it would have gone, but we are one of the very few in Essex Labour towns.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that the Lib Dems could take it at the next election if they don't sort their shit out. But who knows?
Zach Palance is going for leadership of the Greens at the moment. I think that's a mistake. I know you've got your own beef with Zach.
No, I just don't think he's as... I like Carla.
Yeah, I like Carla as well. However, I do feel like if they had a Mick Lynch, how well would they do? Someone who could just demolish the argument in a regional accent, demolish the arguments of Tice when Tice is saying, "Oh, we've got to stop this net zero nonsense. Oh, the weather changes, the temperatures changes all the time over millions. Yeah, we've only had civilization for 10,000 years of the fucking 13.7 billion years of the fucking universe, you dickhead." It's always, people. What's happened is these life forms have always evolved into something that could dig out all this carbon out of the ground and then burn the bastards. I'm like, I don't
No,
think they
you're
have.
right. I think we need like a Danny Dyer
Yeah,
wet.
straight talking.
Yeah.
Because I think also as well, like some of the environmental protests, and we talked about Just Stop Oil and whether they actually achieved their aims or not, or actually did more damage to the environmental movement or not. But I can't disagree with the fact that they didn't connect with working class people at all. They're going to art galleries that working class people in Liverpool wouldn't have gone to. Do you know what I mean? And they're doing this, and it seemed like a middle class protest.
Oh,
And I didn't see it connecting with your white van man who's trying to get across the city to do work or whatever. It's just got to get up his nose.
Though. I mean, I don't think it's meant to, because anything that's going to be disruptive enough to get them on the news. I think Greenpeace got it right when they tarped Sunak's house.
Yes.
Wasn't there. None of the kids were going to get spooked. He was away. They knew he was away and the family were away, and they tarped his entire house. I wanted to see Just Stop Oil, who I'm sympathetic to the cause of. No way should they be in prison. You had all the posh bloody tractor lads blocking off Whitehall. You didn't get people, and they did block an ambulance. No news about that for days.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to them, but I think that the protest should have been peacefully, I hasten to add, in our climate of political violence. They should have been targeting directly the interests of and the assets of the MPs that are in government. So they should have been targeting, I don't know, the second home of a Tory. And they should have been, they did do, I think it was it Osborne? One of them got married and they
threw glitter over him or something.
They threw glitter. I thought that was a really good one. Because as long as it's not causing harm or distress or terror or hurting anyone, but I think it should have been directed directly at the source, because they're the people that need to feel the inconvenience, even if it was just laying down in front of their car, to stop them from being able to go. Something like that would have been more effective. But again, because of the way that the right wing has such a hold on working class people, they could have spun it any way they wanted to anyway. And that's what people weren't talking about when Just Stop Oil was stopping an ambulance getting somewhere, was at that time ambulances weren't even fucking turning up under the Tory government. You couldn't even get an ambulance to come to you. My nan laid on a bathroom floor for 8 hours with her hip gone. Jesus. And in the end, my uncle had to carry her downstairs, and they had to drive her to A&E and try and get her in a car when she was screaming in pain. I mean, people were dying of heart attacks because ambulances weren't turning up. Nobody was focusing on that. They were just focusing on, Just Stop Oil, stop an ambulance. I was just shocked there was an ambulance at that point. That's how bad things were, like queuing outside of hospitals and Tory MPs being like that for photo ops with ambulances in the background queuing up. It was a really scary time.
I agree. I mean, I just feel like Just Stop Oil in particular, I think they had a real problem with connecting with ordinary people. I think, that they did get their cause at the top of the agenda more. I mean, in a much more direct way, i.e. the front covers of newspapers, in a way that we didn't get when we were protesting against Brexit. We had 1 million people come out in London. That wasn't in the front cover of all the newspapers.
You're not going to get it because they're owned by the billionaires.
I understand the thinking behind it, but I feel a lot of it was like preaching to the converted. It was people like me and you who were already politically active, already concerned about the environment and want something to be done. But the thing is, like with a leader who can actually have the enthusiasm. I mean, I think One Angry Pagan was talking about Steve Irwin, right? Have the enthusiasm needed to get people on side and get people excited about this is the thing with environmentalism. Everyone can be an environmentalist. Everyone can recycle. Everyone can plant a tree. Everyone can get a less fuel, a more fuel efficient vehicle, or whatever it is. Like, and give people credit for doing that. Say, well fucking done. You know, give them a fucking certificate to put over the bloody mantelpiece, you know, whatever it is. Because what we do on the left and what we do to working class people, and this is something that, I sort of look at it because from a sort of an outsider's point of view, is I feel like the left often makes working class people feel bad about themselves.
Yeah, you're
they're
wrong.
in a shit situation. Things are shit. They're told that all this is being done by incredibly manipulative arseholes, millionaires with loads of money, advertising agencies. They're told that the problems in their life are caused by immigrants, black people, Muslims, trans people. And so when they go for that, we point at them and go, oh, fucking knobhead, you fall for that. And it makes them feel bad and it pushes them further down that pipeline. And I think we need to have a program where we empower people and make them feel like, even in a small way, they're in control of their own destiny, which I think is something that a lot of people have lost. And take it back to what we were talking at the beginning, I think that a lot of that is because all the cool jobs are taken by the posh kids. We're not going to get them, you know?
No, I do agree with that. And the problem is where we're having these discussions too, they're not really discussions, they're text-based, very distanced, where people will just say things they'd never dream of saying in real life, you know, and the temperature's raised, and obviously the apps rely on outrage as a way to get clicks and to get so the popular posts that you see are the ones that are the most kind of sensationalist, really. So online is not the place to do it. I think people need to be like what you're doing, getting into the community and talking to people. And this is where Political X, those of you, I know he's in the chat, he's been doing some great vox pops on this. I did one with him in Clacton. We went to Clacton.
You're braver than I, Tan.
We're behind. Like, I was late, and I was like, "Shit! I've left Al behind enemy lines." Like, shit. I'm gonna be late, and I'm gonna turn up, and he's gonna have everything ripped off him. But we had such a mix of people, but it wasn't like what you would expect. I mean, the people that voted Reform wouldn't talk to us, wouldn't answer. One did. But she was just spouting Daily Mail headlines. And there were a few that after a little bit of conversation would come round to saying what they really thought about him. And they were very expressive with it. But the scary thing is what Al found in Peckham, of all places, in his recent video, which made me want to bash my head off a wall, is that there are people you would never expect. There was a black man who was talking about like praising Enoch, essentially kind of like almost praising Enoch Powell and Farage. And I was like, what levels of like mental gymnastics do you have to, I can't understand it, because they're overtly racist, right? But we do need to go back to trying to have these conversations in real life, talking to people in the pub.
And don't make people feel bad. Don't make them feel bad about having to drive to work. Oh, you're driving a petrol car, you bastard. Oh, did you go on holiday? Did you get on a plane? Do you know how much damage that's... Oh, you eat meat, do you? You bastard. Think about the faces of all those little animals that you kill. And all we do is make people feel bad. We've got to stop it. We've got to empower people and make them feel like anything's possible. Because that's what the fash do. That's what. Oh, talking of smashing the fash, David has put a €10 super chat in, and it's a
let me check this out.
Really lovely message. If you want to read that in orange,
I think it's €20 actually. Yeah. David Whelan. Hi Tansky and Graham. I stumbled upon your channel here one night and have been loving it ever since. No, have a pint of Valium on me. I wish. Galway Island. Oh, please, will you adopt us?
Yes, please. Take us home with you.
let us come and live with you, please. Take care and smash that fash. Absolutely. We're trying. We're trying. But no, I think you've got a really good point with the fact that I think we need to out ridiculous them. Okay, I'm not being entirely serious here. But could you imagine if, say, like, the Greens or the Lib Dems had someone like Danny Dyer as their leader, right? Yeah. And he was just plain talking and he's
from the hip. Yeah.
That's where Mick Lynch is a brilliant communicator.
Yes.
We disagree with him on Brexit because it's just insane to me that a left winger would ever agree with Brexit. but he is brilliant at articulating himself. You sit there and you listen to him and you think, yeah, he gets you hyped up, doesn't he?
Yeah. Steve Irwin, exactly the same. Like
Steve Irwin?
he got you excited. Steve Irwin, the Australian guy, crocodile guy.
I
He
was
got people
thinking like
really
that.
excited about fucking animals, and it was because he was just so enthusiastic. He was like, "Yeah, come on," and and this isn't just a thing of waiting for a savior to come along. I don't think this is going to be the be all and end all, but it would really, really help because I don't think there is that kind of figure on the left in the UK or in the US at the moment, and we really, really need it.
We do. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's, yeah, we need to kind of out-populist them
Yeah,
in a way.
imagine watching a show and like someone just, Farage is going down there and someone just says, mate, that's just bollocks. That clip will go massively viral, especially if they explain to him why it was bollocks.
Afterwards, but that initial...
That's just bollocks.
The problem is though, right? I think that's the route that they're going to go down themselves. I think this is the route I can see Farage going down because, unfortunately, I've watched Years and Years by Russell T Davies, which is on Netflix now. If you want to see how this all pans out, he's not been wrong yet, really, which is terrifying.
Dystopia warning.
Dystopia warning, strongly advised, but it is so on the money. But
at least we're aware of it. At least, like that's what I think. I mean,
that's the worst thing is knowing.
No, because at least it's not just me and you. It's not just everyone watching this. There's loads of people who are aware of what's going on, who maybe 50 years ago wouldn't be aware because the only way of getting information was through the newspapers that were owned by a handful of newspaper barons. God, thank God those days are over, Tan?
Oh, yeah, thank God. Thank God that's the thing in the part. No, I get it. We've got like our own independent channels, but we're far more responsible with our power. We fact check. We make sure we're putting out accurate information. If we do fuck up,
we try our best, yeah.
And we will say, oh shit, like there's been a time when I've put a video out and I've realised that I've made an error, even if it's just a stat, and I've gone, oh no, this is the correct thing.
I've got a pop-up and it says I was wrong and I accept responsibility.
Exactly.
When I fuck up.
We'll beat ourselves up about it because we don't want to mislead people. But the problem is there's a lot of people that are doing what we're doing, but for the right, who will spread lies to people, and they will pay TikTok to boost their posts to tens of thousands of people, which is the only way you get views there now. And YouTube's a bit more egalitarian on that front. I've actually found it's become my favourite platform that I've used, actually, YouTube, which is why I really appreciate everyone that watches and joins in. And the community here is so much nicer.
It is.
It's not as bad as it is other places, especially as a woman too, because it's pretty difficult for us to try and do this, and you have to wade through a lot of really scary abuse and threats that you get from day dot, so yeah, I'm really, really grateful for this particular platform. I'd say it's my favorite, but I don't think they can jig this as much as they can things like Twitter, which is obviously promoting reform massively. Even if it's direct funding, he is giving them boosted views. And
but one of the things that we have to recognise as well is, like you said earlier about meeting a black voter in Clacton who thought Farage was great. Like, we can't look at any group, whether it's working class, whether it's black people, whether it's Muslims, Jews, trans people. We can't look at a group and say they're all like this. They all like this particular thing, because they're not one monolithic group. And you're always going to have that diversity of opinion. But I just think that the mainstream political parties on the left could be doing a lot more to connect with working class people than they are at the moment. And I think the one thing they need to stop doing is talking on behalf of them. And what you need to do is start listening.
Getting the real temperature of the country. And the only reason I, in particular, mentioned a man of colour when I was talking about the person in Peckham was the fact that he himself mentioned Enoch Powell, and who was a rabid racist. That's the only thing that took me aback about that, and how he linked that to Nigel Farage as a positive.
Yeah.
Now that to me is like praising I don't know, it's not quite on the same level as praising a KKK leader, but it's not far off. You know, that is just wild to me. So I just couldn't figure out the link there. But you're right, they're not kind of like, is it homogenous?
Yeah, that's the word. It's not
they're
one
not
homogenous blob.
No, but I think I need to. I think I'm going to need to.
People are, you know.
Actually,
Yeah, we
Graham.
do, because it's past my bedtime. We have got a couple more super chats. We've got one off Si and one off Tim. If you want to read them out, and then we can wrap up.
Si McGill, thank you very much. £5. Said it before and I'll say it again. If you reached me, you've reached others. Don't give up what you're doing. Oh, right. Were you previously? Were you one of them, Si? Were you one of the others? Were you on the other side of the fence there? If so, thank you.
That's a really nice comment. Thanks.
It is really nice. Yeah, like it gives us a bit of hope to know that we actually can reach people.
And Tim at the bottom there.
Thanks also, Mike Ferguson. That's a very nice comment. Tim White, £4.99. Shout out to Reform Exposed over on Twitter. Agree.
Yes, Reform Exposed. Well worth a follow.
Brilliant. Yeah, you'll see me.
Blue Sky. Blue Sky.
On Eva, I retweet them most days. So
brilliant.
Shout out to Reform Exposed on Twitter, putting in some relentless work at the moment, exposing the new racist intake of Reform Limited councillors. Well said, Tim. Thank you.
Fantastic.
That is, they're doing. I can't say the Lord's work, so I'm not religious.
They're doing the Lord's work. That's fine.
Doing the work. they're doing some work. But no, yeah, they're really doing well at the moment. I appreciate whoever's behind that, because I remember when they had just I followed them really early on because they were objectively funny. Some of the stuff that they were pointing out, like one of the Reform councillors who's all Christianity and God was found on field looking for freeways and commenting on porn stars. I think it was the former leader of UKIP, allegedly commenting on porn stars' pages on Twitter openly, publicly. I don't care. Oh shit, we've got another one before we
wrap up.
George, not George Dawes. What the score was George Dawes. Can you guys explain Darren Grimes, please? I wish I could, mate.
I think that he has, he grew up in a working class area here in Durham, single mum, and he's gay, and I don't think his youth was easy. And a bunch of rich people come along and say, hey, would you like some money?
I think it's the money. I think it is because he studied fashion in Brighton and apparently he was quite progressive prior.
He went from fashion to fash.
Fashion to fash, which is the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, you should go from fashion to fashion, like Hugo Boss.
I mean, snappy outfits.
Snappy dresses they wear, yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thank you very much to my friend, my producer, my confidant, my sharer of extraordinarily funny memes, Graham Hughes, Politics Social. Please go to his channel and follow him. He puts out some brilliant live streams if you don't already. And thank you from me. Tune in next time for more bitter rants.
Thanks, Tan. Bye, everyone.